Hiya, I hope you're keeping well. Today I want to run through some brush recommendations. It's going to be more about shapes of brushes and what they do, rather than like you have to get this particular brush. So the first thing I'd love you to do, if you wouldn't mind, is go and get every single makeup brush that you've got. As well, have a look in, like, if you've got an eyeshadow palette or something that already has a brush in it, go and grab everything, because chances are you've probably got loads of these already, and I just want to give you some ideas of how best to use them. So I asked this a couple of weeks ago. I've been meaning to do this video. I've had loads of good questions, so I'm kind of going to walk you through and then come to some questions as we go along. So first of all, I thought I'd show you eye brushes. If we're going absolute basics here, a few key shapes that everybody needs, I would say there are 3 shapes I recommend for your eyes, which is something fluffy, something flat, and something smudgy. And this is just an example of 3. So the reason being, your fluffy one will help you to blend out any edges. Your flat one will help you to pack on the product. And your little smudgy one will go under here and along that lash line if you wanted liner. They're 3 shapes, I think, that when you've got them in your kit, you can do any kind of eye makeup look. If you were to pick just one, go for this one, because it will do all of those jobs. That's your eyes. For your complexion, I would always recommend one great foundation brush and one great powder brush. I've got 2 here that I always use. This is the It Cosmetics Complexion Perfection brush. I tend to use a fluffy foundation brush, but we'll come on to those in a minute. And something really fluffy for your powders, so that everything glides on nice and seamlessly. So before we go any further, if you were to ask me for a complete edit of brushes, get a pencil brush, a fluffy brush, a flat brush, something for powders, something for your foundation, and that is in theory a fantastic makeup bag of brushes for you. Now, I'd like to show you a bit more detail about everything, and I'm going to put some makeup on as I go to show you what I mean. So let's start with my fluffy brush. This is really lovely. I'm going to take just a little bit of NARS bronzer here. This is really lovely, especially with matte shades through the socket of this eye. When you think about all of your makeup brushes, the density and fluffiness of the brush is directly mirrored in how fluffy the finish will be. So when I say fluffy, like you can see here, this is creating a really soft blended wash of colour that looks nice and diffused. So the softness of that brush is going to help you to achieve that finish. So that's great for smoking out your smoky eye. You could also use that all over the lid. This particular one is a MAC 217 that I've had, I kid you not, for 10 years. If you look after your brushes and get good ones, and good doesn't have to mean expensive, but choose wisely a few key shapes and wash them in warm water, not hot water, they will last you. That one has lasted me 10 years. Now, a flat brush. This is another MAC one from the same 10 years ago. This is a 233. Something flat is really good to pack product on. I'm just going to show you this. This is a Danessa Myrick's Lightworks palette. I just ordered it last week. I've only just started following her, and her makeups are lovely, so I just thought I'd give it a try. It's all different highlighters, but I'm going to use it for makeup. Anyway, I digress. Something flat you're going to use. I've already got my mascara on today. I was doing another video earlier on. See how that just pats the product on? So I'm not going back and forth. There's nothing fluffy. It's not going to go everywhere. That is really good for building and layering your colour. So there is an example of what your flat brush will do. And then your pencil brush, I'm going to take another palette. This is the Urban Decay Ultraviolet palette. I'm just going to take, again, a nice matte shade. Your pencil brush is really great for potentially creating something nice and soft along that lash line. This is a really soft brown actually. I wonder if this is even coming up on the video. Can you see that? It's very fair, but you get the idea. I think I went a little bit too soft on the colour choice there to prove my point, but it still looks nice. But basically that pencil brush is really good for any kind of smaller details, really good for intensifying this section here if you're doing a smoky eye. Always good to have in the kit. Okay, now complexion wise, in fact, let me have a look at some of these questions. So, Mrs. Spencer, the best bronzer brush to add warmth rather than contour. You want something really fluffy like this, because something to contour, again, coming back to that density, the smaller and thinner and more densely packed those brush hairs, that's the finish you're going to get. Whereas something nice and soft and fluffy like this, when I sweep it into my bronzer, is just going to glide over, add warmth all over, as you said, keeping an eye on your questions here. There's no harsh lines, but if I kept going and built and built and built that would start to develop. Paula, best brush for highlighting. I would always say you want to take something, again, really soft. That's like almost like an enormous version of the brush we use through here. This is a Peaches PC17, and that was an It Cosmetics Wand Ball powder brush, I should have said. Something for highlighting, because you want to build that to a level that feels comfortable for you without absolutely going berserk. Something soft, if you can see there. I've got the power to keep that as soft or as full as I want to. And because it's so soft, again, you're not left with any stripes or anything too much, but I can build that if I would like. I'm going to just take a little bit in those key areas too. Okay, so that's some of my faves. Let me come through some of these questions. Beth Ann, a brush is better than a beauty blender. It's totally up to you. I would just say with a beauty blender, because it's a sponge and it's designed to absorb, it's potentially going to drink up a lot of product. So I would always personally prefer hands or a brush so that it's not going to absorb too quickly. I do think there's definitely a time and a place for sponges, but potentially someone wrote this in the comments of another video I did a few weeks ago. Maybe you can just get your base on and then use the sponge to finish it, and you get that lovely diffused finish without it soaking up too much product. Siobhan, you've asked when to use fingers and when to use a brush. I think it really depends on the product you're using, and just have a little Google of which techniques they recommend. So like, for example, at NARS, their whole technique is that they love the warmth of the fingertips. Everything's designed to work really well with the hands, whereas other things, you're just not going to get the same finish. Like, for example, I'm thinking off the top of my head, the It Cosmetics Bye Bye Under Eye Concealer. That just looks so full if you don't use a brush, but when you use a brush, it looks nice and soft and flawless. Speaking of that, Lindsay, you asked me about concealer brushes. So let me just touch on Complexion next. Going with the previous rule, if you like to build lots of coverage, you might prefer something dense. This is a traditional Estee Lauder flat foundation brush. This is going to be really good for you if I can hold it properly. If you think of this motion and it's more of like a painting motion, that's really good for when you want to build coverage and layer that product on. Whereas something fluffy like the It Cosmetics Complexion Perfection brush, this is really good if you want to buff everything in nice and soft and build the coverage as you want to go on. Both of them are really good, and again, I think it depends on the formula that you're using. But when it comes to concealer, I would always personally recommend something domed and fluffy. And the reason for that is I think we're all looking for concealer that isn't going to sit in fine lines, going to have that coverage without feeling heavy, and something domed and fluffy is going to help you to achieve that soft, creamy finish. This is the Real Techniques Deluxe Crease Brush, really great one. I'm just checking these questions so that I don't forget anything. Right. Claire said, do you get as good results with affordable brushes? Lots of people have said this. Josie had said, what are the best high street brushes that do a really good job? Everyone seems to be asking that. For me personally, the standout brand by a mile is your Peaches brushes. I've got absolutely loads of these. Full disclosure, I used to work at Peaches years and years ago when I was at uni. I'm still very good friends with all of the girls. It's a brilliant place. It's a salon in Liverpool. The Peaches brushes are so good. They're vegan. What I like about the Peaches brushes is they come in every possible shape and size. So for example, let me show you. I was just saying about that highlighter brush. I like something soft and fluffy like this. So they've got different size versions of it. They've got different sizes in things like, if I show you these eyeshadow brushes, like, because you've got so many different sizes, if you know perhaps you've got smaller features, you could get the smaller ones. If you've got a slightly more round face like me, you could get the larger ones. Everything is 4 for £15 or 10 for £35, and they're absolutely great. They wash really well. They're all synthetic. And you've got a complete spectrum of things to choose from, and it's not going to break the bank. Another brand that I really love for affordability is Zoeva. I actually had Zoe, the founder of Zoeva, on my podcast. If you look for Beauty from the Heart, it's a really inspiring story of how she literally changed her life with this brush range. Please have a listen because it was a great one. But their brushes are really great quality. Again, they've got every shape you can think of. They've got lovely makeup as well, actually, and they're not going to break the bank. Real Techniques, brilliant brush brand. You'll get it in Boots. They tend to do lots of sets that are like pre-made sets of things that are great. Do have a look. I'm really running out of time here. I've had so many things I wanted to tell you. Liner. If you're looking for a great liner brush, I really like, this is the Bobbi Brown double-ended liner brush. You've got 2 different thicknesses there. Lots of people like these slanted brushes for liners. I personally find them a bit too difficult and fiddly for liner, but that's just me. If you did get a slanted brush like this, the advantage is you could also use it for your eyebrows. So just have a think about what works for you. A few other things I wanted to call out. Charlotte Tilbury brushes are great. I really like the blending brush especially. Also her powder and sculpt brush is great for if you want a contour without it looking like you've contoured, but you just want to add some shape to your face. Kate, you wanted a blush brush, you never get it right. I would go back to, this is a Peaches PC03. Something soft. I mean, one of the things I think we're all conditioned to know is that an angled brush is great for blusher. This is a Bobbi one, it is fantastic. But if you wanted something soft, this is so dense, you just saw the product come off there, that it will really gently build that blush, and you can't really get it wrong because you're going in nice and softly because it's not picking up loads of product. That was a bit of Charlotte Tilbury pillow talk. So, key takeaways before I run out of time. You absolutely don't need to spend a fortune. Get yourself to Peaches, Zoeva, Real Techniques. They're brilliant. My most used brushes are probably the Peaches and the It Cosmetics brushes. As you know, I do work with It Cosmetics on an ongoing basis, just so that I've made that clear while I mention that, but the brushes are fantastic. Leanne, best bronzer brush for a smaller face. Again, have a look at Peaches because they've got all of those different shapes, large and small, to suit those different features. Gemma, how do you avoid lines? They are annoying. Wash your brushes in warm soapy water as often as possible. I've got a video on that as well, if you have a look in my IGTVs. And this is nearly 15 minutes, so I have to go. But if you've got any other brush questions, leave them below and I'll get back to you. Okay, I'll see you.